The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 84, recorded on Friday, March 3rd from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we'll talk about America's most sacred pastime, shooting each other in the face with a bunch of guns. Yeah!
Woo!
But first, the headlines.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
So let's start this episode with some Republican craziness for headlines.
I think that's going to be this entire episode.
I mean, that's most of our episodes, but like specific Republican okay, well, anti-LGBT, no, hang on. Mississippi, no. Mississippi bans gender-affirming care for the entire state. This is more anti-trans garbage, and I am not shocked by any means.
I think there's been something like 300 bills proposed.
Yeah.
In the last 2 years, specifically targeting LGBT and trans people in this country. It's horrible, and it's something we don't hear enough of.
Well, and according to the article, the legislation prohibits the provision of, quote, gender transition procedures, including puberty blockers and gender reassignment surgeries to anyone under 18 years old. And we have to remember, number one, people under 18 years old do not get gender reassignment surgery. Also, there is a very good reason for it. And then number two, puberty blockers are not just for gender transition stuff. Like, they've been using this since the freaking 1980s, and it is perfectly fine and perfectly able to use this, but for some reason it's become this weird target for the radical right.
Because we're mutilating children.
With reversible drugs. They're literally designed to be not mutilating. It's so stupid, man. I'm just, and I know it's Mississippi. I understand, but it just makes me very angry. Because I know we're doing the same crap here in Wisconsin. And I know for a fact that once we get a Republican governor, which
all those lunatic bills will pass.
Yes.
That we make fun of in other states.
Yes. And it scares the crap out of me, man.
Mm-hmm. That's why the state Supreme Court race is so important.
Yep.
And that's why we've been harping on it over the past month. And we will continue to do so until April.
Vote for Janet Protasiewicz. Let's move to Texas.
Let's not move to Texas. If anything, I'm going further north.
We're going to stick with the depressing news first, because a Texas judge is about to rule on whether or not mifepristone, which is one of the leading abortion pills in the entire country, can be permanently banned all throughout the use of the country.
And no surprise, this is a district court judge who was appointed by Donald Trump and was criticized during his confirmation hearing about his work at a conservative religious liberty legal organization.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. This guy was literally put there just to carry out radical right-wing agendas. That's it. He is hardcore crazy Federal Society nonsense believing crazy person, and all he does is he's another pawn that is meant to carry out the pro-life agenda. And of course, who's taking on this case but the loved, didn't we talk about them last week?
We did.
The Alliance Defending Freedom, the hate group, because of course they are. According to the article, the lawsuit filed by the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, which is an anti-abortion organization,
and not a hippopotamus organization,
right, seeks to reverse the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, approval of the drug and remove it completely from the market. The lawsuit alleges there have not been sufficient studies into the safety of mifepristone quite yet. The Alliance Defending Freedom's senior counsel, Julie Mary Blake, a terrible person, also a conservative Christian legal crazy, advocate, said the organization is, quote, confident that when any court looks at the law and looks at the science, really,
that the earth is only 6,000 years old.
Really, Julie? You want to talk about the science?
Dinosaurs weren't real.
Anyway, it will realize that the FDA has completely failed its responsibility to protect women and girls. Screw off. Because there has been multiple studies already done. There has been sufficient evidence put out that mifepristone is safe and effective, and actually most gynecologists do agree that it's perfectly fine to use.
And it has been used thousands of times.
Yes.
To abort pregnancies and to treat miscarriages.
So shocker, the Alliance Defending Freedom, the hate group, is lying.
It ain't in the Bible, Joe.
Well, they ain't lying about Julie being the top counsel. That's a man's position, all right? That's in the Bible.
Who told her she could learn? In 2 Timothy, it says, "Woman, shut up and get in the kitchen." That's what I learned. I have heard legal analysts do believe, though, that regardless of the ruling, the circuit court judge does not actually have the authority to ban this drug for all 50 states. So that's something, at least.
Well, and the other thing that I've been hearing as well is that hopefully it would just be a weirdly narrow decision that will just not affect anyone anyway, kind of like what you were talking about. I think generally the concern will be is, will it go up to the Supreme Court? And who knows what the hell's going to happen after that.
All they have to say is religion, and then they win the court case.
Well, and don't have to do that because it's just pro-life at this point, so.
But you have to say religion.
Oh, okay.
Because you have to say because of religion.
Well, for God's sakes, the ADF probably has the majority of the SCOTUS's phone numbers at this point. It was probably just call them up.
They were probably praying with them.
right
with
before
the story that we had with the football coach.
Right.
They all had prayers with the Supreme Court justices before that decision. And that was the same group. So, yes, I guarantee you they know all of them personally.
Don't you love our country? And speaking of love for our country, let's go to the last great place, Florida. We should move to Florida.
No, again, going north, not south, if I'm moving anywhere.
According to an article, a Florida Republican is pitching a bill that will officially ban the Democratic Party from running in Florida. It has been known as the Ultimate Cancel Act. According to the bill called SB 1248, it would require Florida officials to notify all registered voters who belong to any canceled parties that their parties no longer exist because they have previously advocated for or have been in support of slavery or involuntary servitude.
Well, according to the 13th Amendment, as we've said, slavery is only outlawed except for punishment for a crime. So technically, all labor, forced labor in prisons is considered slavery.
Yeah.
And who supports forcing prisoners to work? Which party does that currently?
I believe it's the Republicans.
Advocating for slavery. Both the Republicans and the Democrats get canceled with this bill. The Democrats, because 150 years ago, the Democratic Party supported slavery. And again, we won't mention that they were the conservative party 150 years ago.
That became the Republicans.
And that they were right-wing. And yes, the views of the party have completely flipped since then. Won't talk about that. But 150 years ago, they advocated for slavery. But in current day, the Republican Party advocates for slavery as legally defined by the Constitution that they love so very much, but don't know anything about except for the Second Amendment. And even that, only half of that sentence.
My other favorite part about this article is that it says the bill will allow canceled parties to re-register with the state. So, they're fine, except you have to use a significantly different name other than the party that you previously registered with. So this dude's trying to literally out-legal the Democratic Party out of existence. Oh, this is so dumb.
This is the combination of conservatism and Florida man. It's the perfect, melding of stupid.
Oh, man. And it scares me because I actually don't know what's going to happen in Florida. Who knows?
Ron DeSantis is their governor. Yeah, their legislature is overwhelmingly Republican. It's possible that it would pass. I can't see this being constitutional.
I can mean it.
And again, you can make a very strong argument that the Republican Party currently endorses slavery. So
Anarchy in Florida.
I almost kind of want it to happen just to see.
Go Green Party.
So let's move to some more serious news now.
The most important news of the week.
As I sit here looking at my late 90s Dilbert merchandise that I found in my basement in a box just for this story.
And he showed me it still works, by the way.
I had to put new batteries in it, but it still does work.
I love that you put new batteries in just to test it.
a Dilbert M&M dispenser. Because as a white man working in IT in the 90s, I was a fan of the comic strip Dilbert. Up until the point where I saw the movie Office Space, and then I realized realized, oh, that is actually how you do comedy about an office workplace. And then I kind of forgot about Dilbert after that.
Like most people did.
Right.
He faded into existence in glory, the pearly gates of pop culture and all that fun stuff.
But apparently it's still been around, even though no one has read it in the past 20 years. I think it's was at least in the business section.
I don't know.
Of our newspaper. It's not in the comics. I know that, because my wife will still occasionally read the comics when we come across the archaeological discovery of a newspaper. But it's not in the comics section. I think it's in like business. They'll run Dilbert
comics.
But probably not anymore, because Dilbert was removed from most major newspapers over the past week because Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, was canceled.
Whoa.
Victim of cancel culture.
Oh, no. I bet he didn't do anything that bad.
Of course not. This all came from a YouTube live stream, and we'll link it if you want to watch it, posted on February.
You want to watch it.
It's crazier than we're going to even make it out to
crazier than
be.
you ever imagined. Go on a trip, you guys.
It was posted on February 22nd, and it's still up, where Adams referenced a Rasmussen poll that found that a slim majority of Black Americans agreed with the statement, "It's okay to be white." The actual question from the survey was, do you agree or disagree with this statement, "It's okay to be white"? It was a national survey of 1,000 American adults conducted between February 13th to the 15th of this year. So,
and I believe if I saw the crosstabs correctly, it was like 100 Black people. It was not a lot of Black people.
Right. Out of a survey of 1,000 adults, it's not going to be, a lot of Black Americans.
Mind as well.
And it was only done 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
A little bit of backstory. The phrase, "It's okay to be white," is associated with a 4chan campaign in 2017 designed to troll woke white people by putting the signs in public places, and they put them up on a statue of Martin Luther King, on college campuses, in areas that are horribly inappropriate. A synagogue, there were 3 of these things on the door of the synagogue, where they assumed some people would take offense and remove the signs, proving that the woke are too fragile and they can't even agree with the simple statement, "It's okay to be white."
They hate white people with all their being, even though they're white themselves.
Self-hating white people.
Yeah.
The phrase had been used by white supremacist groups for at least the past 20 years, and the campaign was quickly adopted by those white supremacist groups,
like they do,
who added neo-Nazi language, website links, or images to the flyers with that phrase. So anybody who may have been aware of that, or is just reasonably freaked out by someone asking them if they agree or disagree with the phrase, "It's okay to be white," would understandably have some hesitation when answering this question.
But you don't even have to go that far, man, because even in a more colloquial sense, okay, most people don't know what the hell 4chan even is, right? But even a colloquial sense, this is the equivalent of saying like Black Lives Matter and then like, oh no, I mean white lives matter too, don't they? That's exactly what's happening here too. So even if you didn't know all of the neo-Nazi and white supremacist stuff, you still had the context of somebody going, are we really doing this all lives matter crap again? Like, and then they may just like be annoyed by the question or how it's phrased, because it's a part of a conservative right-wing movement that's all based on identity politics, but for white people.
Well, just the idea of like, do you agree or disagree with "it's okay to be white"? My first question would be, where did you come up with the idea that it's not okay to be white? Like, where in all of human history does the idea that it's not okay or the default to be white? Where is that? So yeah, I would have been one of the people disagreeing wholeheartedly with that sentiment, because I know what is behind that question. It's someone who is horribly racist who wants to justify their racism and show that actually they're the victim, being a white person.
Right.
And I would give them exactly what they want and tell them that I disagree with that statement. That's just the way I would answer it. According to Rasmussen, 72% of Americans agreed with the statement, including 53% of Black respondents. 22% of Americans disagreed, including 26% of Black respondents. So we have 28% of the total that did not agree, and 47% of black respondents did not agree.
Correct.
That doesn't mean they disagreed, only 26% disagreed.
Right.
And the rest either didn't answer the question, said unsure,
right.
Whatever.
And for context, Rasmussen is an explicitly Republican-leaning pollster. They are not objective. They are intentionally a partisan pollster. Nate Silver and 538, which is a polling aggregate center, have been complaining about their bias throwing off averages for several years now, including the midterms, by the way, that they got completely wrong because they kept giving conservatives and Republicans way more chances than they should have had. And it's only getting worse from there as they transition even harder to be the non-mainstream pro-conservative polling firm that tells you the, quote, truth the media doesn't want you to know. Ooh, scary crap, right? By comparison, the American National Election Studies Survey, which is far more reputable and actually what political science do actually rely on compared to partisan pollsters, has collected feeling thermometers of various racial groups for decades. I'm talking about since like the 1960s to 70s. Shocker, feelings toward different racial groups is relatively the same, a score of around 70 out of 100, which means that everyone's usually seen mostly positive. I'll include the charts in our show notes if you want to see it yourselves. I highly recommend it. It's actually pretty interesting stuff, but they're all basically the same. You actually do see a slight decrease in favorability towards white people when they went from like 75 to like 69, but like they're now all relatively seen as equal.
I wonder if having 4 years under Donald Trump had something to do with that.
I am not surprised.
But if you're Scott Adams, as he read this report on his live stream, he said that he has been identifying as black for years because he likes to be on the winning team. But now he is re-identifying as white because he does not want to be a member of a hate group. That is a hate group, and I don't want anything to do with them. And I would say, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. Just get the F away. Wherever you have to go, just get away, because there is no fixing this. You just have to escape. So that's what I did. I went to a neighborhood where you have a very low black population. I wonder why he was canceled from all of the newspapers. I know. That is literally what he said. Is like the most racist thing. Because he read a poll.
And he misinterpreted the poll. He read a partisan poll that was already bad in its methodology and then misinterpreted that poll to make it worse. And went on an entire racist rant.
His interpretation was that half of the black people in the country hate white people.
But that, again...
And it's a poll of like, what, 100 we said? About? And listening to it, he has this horrible white savior complex. Here's a quote. "I like to focus a lot of my resources on helping black Americans. So much so that I started identifying as black. To just be on the team that I was helping. He's the black savior. He is going to fix the problems of the black community. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert."
Oh, how many times has he said the N-word to somebody or asked to say the N-word?
According to like that rant, probably like every day.
Oh my God.
Because he literally was like, "Oh, I'm just your normal average conservative." And then he heard a poll that said that only 53% of black Americans agree with the term or the phrase, "it's okay to be white." And then he's like right away, "We need to get away from the black people. They're no good. We need to segregate society." And then he says, "I was helping black Americans every day of my life." Literally. But yet he also said that he escaped. Remember, this poll was only 2 weeks ago. But he said that he went to a neighborhood with a very low black population. I thought he was the black savior, but he moved away from black people.
Within 2 weeks.
Yeah, I guarantee he's been living there for a lot longer than 2 weeks. So he's clearly lying, no surprise, about his support for the black community. It's very clear that he's just been a racist for a long time, and he's using this poll to justify it. And not only that, but true to the conservative that he is, He is using this poll to justify not supporting any social program that would benefit the black community. Another quote, I think it makes no sense whatsoever as a white citizen of America to try to help black citizens anymore. It doesn't make sense. It is no longer a rational impulse. So I'm going to back off from being helpful to black America, the creator of Dilbert, everybody, because it doesn't seem like it pays off. Like, I've been doing it all my life and have been, the only outcome is that I get called a racist.
You poor man.
The real victim
is me.
Millionaire Scott Adams, who drew a nerdy cartoon in the 90s and has been living off of that ever since.
So, and you kind of just heard about this right before we started recording, but I do want to make it aware for people. Like, he didn't just randomly become crazy all of a sudden and just became super racist. Scott Adams has been off his rocker for years now. And yes, he already like supported Trump and all that. And
I knew he was always a big Trump guy.
Like, he is like a full-on like crazy conspiracy theorist. There are multiple videos of him doing like weird numerology things, saying like finding like the words or the number 666 in different like corporate logos and the whole shebang. Like, dude is freaking insane.
The guy who has a devil character as part of his comics, the one thing he's known for.
So I'm gonna be 100% honest. When I saw this story, I'm like, God, finally someone canceled him. Like, my God, it took this long.
Well, and that's what you put in the article. We've got a link to other cartoonists basically saying the same thing. Like, it's about time. This guy has been a horrible racist and a horrible person forever. Good, now we can get him and Dilbert out of there and actually get some new voices in these comic strips. I don't know who reads them. Who reads any comic strips these days? I don't know, but they're the same ones from when I was a kid.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
They still have, what's the dog? Magruder. No.
Marmaduke?
Marmaduke, that's his name.
Wasn't there just a Marmaduke movie a couple of years ago? I'm pretty sure.
Oh, God.
In that, like, Garfield-esque slew of those movies, or Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Jesus.
I think they had a Marmaduke.
So then I thought that was it. Everyone canceled Dilbert. We all moved on, and everyone lived happily ever after, except for Scott Adams, who's a terrible person. And then Jason found so much more, and now I'm upset again.
Well, of course, who is going to see this spectacle going on in social media and on Twitter? That is the bat signal call for lunatic billionaire Elon Musk, who has to get in on this. It's
because why not?
Right. He's got to stay relevant. He's got to keep people engaged on the platform that he overpaid $44 billion for. Responding to an account, and it's not even a blue check account. It's not even somebody paying for Elon's attention. Monitoring Bias, who wrote, Adams was horrified that a poll of black people showed only half believe it's okay to be white, which is making the same mistake that Scott Adams himself did when he read the poll. He called this hate and recommended white people live far away from blacks, which is a normal response, right? That is a perfectly reasonable response.
And the fact that he even wrote it as, he called this hate and recommended white people live far away from blacks. So you said white people and then just used the like pejorative blacks.
Mainstream media verdict. Adams is a racist, but not the 20 million black people who think it's not okay to be white.
So I have so much. You need to say Elon's.
Rasmussen, polled 20 million, every black person in the country, by the way. But Elon Musk responded to that just crazy misinterpretation of a tweet with, the media is racist.
Just the media.
The media is racist.
But he offered clarification.
Because the media canceled Dilbert somehow. And then,
I mean, technically, yes, the media, I guess, did technically cancel
newspapers, there are media, but a dead media. And he did offer even more in response. Elon Musk said, for a very long time, U.S. media was racist against non-white people. Now they're racist against Asians and whites. Same thing happened with elite colleges. How would he know? He did not graduate from college in the United States. That was given to him so he wouldn't get deported.
But he learned from really reputable sources on Twitter, though.
And high schools in America. High schools?
Dude, that's just straight up like CRT nonsense. Like, that's what he's just spouting off.
Maybe they can try not being racist.
Okay, I want to
Says the South African white man.
So there's this defensive going on, and this isn't the only thing that's been happening with Scott Adams, where conservatives are actually trying to defend Scott Adams and all this because they just are reactionary,
well, he's one of them
who just doesn't care.
And they all feel the same way, honestly.
Right. But the idea that Scott Adams just looked at a poll and called out the hate for what it was and then got canceled for it, but because apparently white people can be racist but not black people, because that's the argument they're making, right? That's the anti-woke argument they're making.
And Scott Adams, in that horrible video, by the way, said this is the first time in his life that he's changing his behavior based on a poll.
Right.
This affected him so much.
Right. So like we said, first and foremost, the fact that you literally have to say he recommended that he just live far away from black people because of this one poll.
Yeah, apparently that thing that he's changing is not being openly racist.
Right. And number two, like you said, Jason, the poll took 100-some black people who may or may not have understood exactly the context of the question, because it's okay to be white is very different for a black person who's taking a poll than a white person taking a poll. That is why the methodology of that question is bad. And Rasmussen has been called out for that, and they're doubling down because they're idiots on that.
Well, all you have to do is do exactly what conservatives want to make illegal and think about the history of black people in America. But when you read that question.
But okay, but let's give it even for that much, right? Even if all that happened, Scott Adams then said, based on the responses of 50-some black people that he does not know, just 50 black people in the country.
I thought it was 20 million according to monitoring bias.
Right, that's the whole thing. So because of 50 people, Scott Adams says stay away from all blacks ever. Which is the racist as hell.
And no one should help them.
Right. Well, and then actively do things to hurt them and take away all the resources they have.
Well, that is the American way.
This is grade A nonsense. And I just do not understand why anyone, I'm going to keep saying it every single freaking time we have to talk about Elon Musk. Why does anybody care and worship Elon Musk the way they do? But I know we live in a country where lots of people loved and supported Trump, and so I get it, but I'm angry.
He is just an attention whore. And incredibly stupid. And is trying to embrace the role of the villain because it gets views on Twitter, which is what he has to continue to try to provide because he vastly overpaid for the platform that he now owns. So let's move on to the big news story that came out this week. The United States government has proven,
beyond a shadow of doubt,
that COVID came from a lab in China.
The lab leak theory has been confirmed. There are no holes in this story at all. I've seen it on Wall Street Journal, Fox News, any other mainstream outlets. I've seen the New York Times report on it, CNN report. A couple of my Democrat friends are all upset because now they think that Democrats got it wrong. Life is chaos.
Is that what really happened?
The shame is upon our faces, Jason.
We had a whole episode
about this, and we want to just personally say we're sorry. We're sorry for misinforming you. We're sorry for spreading misinformation.
Just now, because none of that is what actually happened. So the Wall Street Journal broke the story that the U.S. Department of Energy completed a report that's only been shared with the White House and some members of Congress, in which they conclude, quote, with a low level of confidence that the origin of the COVID outbreak came from an accidental infection at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, as I said, because this report is part of national intelligence, we don't know what information or evidence their conclusions are based on. That is, until someone in the White House leaves the classified documents lying around somewhere, which should probably at least happen within the next couple of years. So how would the Department of Energy have an opinion on the origins of COVID? Well,
I would love to know why.
This stems from a 2021 request from President Biden for a U.S. intelligence community report on the origins of COVID-19. Currently, only the FBI stands with the Department of Energy's conclusion. The FBI was a little bit more bold, saying that they had moderate confidence in their position that it was a lab leak. The CIA and another agency basically haven't drawn any conclusions one way or the other. And 4 other unknown intelligence agencies have said that they believe the origin origin was a natural jump from animals to humans. So even within this 8-agency intelligence community look into it, you have 4 that said they believe it was natural, 2 that say they think it was from a lab, and 2 that are undecided. Also, the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, Centers for Disease Control, World Health Organization, and the wider scientific community all believe in the zoonotic origin being most likely. So coming from animals and jumping to humans in the wet market in Wuhan.
Which is what we talked about in that previous episode years ago.
And I stand by it. You can look it up, the lab leak theory, the rise of the lab leak theory.
Are you saying there's not egg on our face, Jason?
No.
Are you saying we don't need to apologize?
Just for the intro to this story.
Okay.
And for pretty much everything else we do, but you can only do so much apologizing.
Hey, it's okay we wait, man.
Told you I disagree.
You don't need to apologize anymore.
And in fact, last year, there were 2 papers published in the journal Science, which outline the evidence, something that we don't get for what the evidence for the lab leak theory is. They showed photographic evidence that in one stall of the market, there were caged wild animals known to be highly susceptible to COVID and known to spew the virus into the air. Inside this particular stall, scientists found SARS-CoV-2 virus on several surfaces. The papers also show epidemiological evidence that probably thousands of people were infected at that market in December of 2019 and how the pandemic literally radiated out from that market. And the only evidence I have heard from anyone, I even heard the Young Turks saying that they believed in the lab leak theory. And the only evidence that they have is because it's too convenient that there is an Institute of Virology that studies coronaviruses in Wuhan, China. The reason that lab is there that studies coronaviruses is because it was known that that was going to happen, that we've had coronavirus outbreaks before in that area, and that because of the bat population native in that area and the wet markets, it was likely to happen again. That's why they made that institute. That's why they study coronaviruses there, because we knew that if a coronavirus outbreak occurred, it was probably going to come from that location.
Because literally that line of thinking is putting the cart before the horse. And I think what makes me even more annoyed is that I'm seeing so many, I mean, we did it as a gag, but I'm seeing so many Democrats and liberals now trying to back off and back down and say, well, I mean, we never actually fully said that it couldn't have come from the lab in Wuhan, or I think it's perfectly fine that it came from a lab in Wuhan. And that, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
But it's an accidental infection and not on purpose. That's like their big fallback position.
Democrats are showing their true freaking colors here. Grow a goddamn spine and stand with the freaking facts of the situation. It's okay.
Follow the science.
I should not have to have my friends contact me who are hearing from CNN that actually Democrats are wrong this entire time and they feel bad that they've been misinformed about this. And I have to tell them, no, you're fine. Quit backing down and quit letting Republicans and conservatives get away with nonsense and bullshit over and over again.
This is just more anti-China propaganda coming from the U.S. government. Not that China doesn't have a lot to answer for, but there's no evidence that this was a virus developed in a lab that either accidentally or purposefully was released. And the evidence that we do have points to the natural jump from animals to humans in the place that we already suspected this could happen.
And keep in mind, too, when you're watching news on CNN, Fox News, well, you're probably not Fox News if you're listening to us, MSNBC, or any like YouTube show that has like mainstream outlets, be careful when they have virologists come on and talk about how they think the lab leak is plausible and all that fun stuff, too. It is so easy to find people who go against the mainstream consensus in the scientific community.
Because it gets them on TV.
Because it gets them on TV. And the reason why they get put on TV is because that's what people want to see. It's exciting to hear the contrary opinion that the establishment doesn't want you to know. It's more exciting of a story to tell about the lab leak theory. And again, I'm going to kind of do what I just kind of railed against. If it is the case that the lab leak theory is true and it supposedly came from the Wuhan lab in China, fine, that's great. But stop pretending that a random report from the Department of Energy based on a low confidence rating is going to completely completely undermine the entire scientific community who's been spending the last couple of years and their entire lives studying to figure out exactly what this is.
We had the story last week of Fox News having proven in court that they don't care about the truth, that they're more interested in pushing their ideology and selling
Literal
ads
propaganda.
and getting clicks and watches to their shows.
Yep.
That's what they care about. Do you think CNN is really they really have journalistic ethics, even though Fox News doesn't? No, it's the same thing. It's all about making money and doing what the boss tells them to do.
Thank you.
M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, they've won.
Boy ain't right.
And in this week, in our Foxed in the Head segment, we have Fox News blasting and destroying Lego. For you guessed it, they went woke, apparently.
In a segment on Fox News, host Harris Faulkner introduced a segment on Lego by announcing that Lego is going woke. The company unveiled a range of new characters in the effort to be more inclusive. Lego says the new characters will promote diversity and understanding.
Oh, we can't have that. Not in America.
These are really important issues, Faulkner told Fox radio host Jimmy. Why are the names always like Jimmy, Bobby, Benny,
Jesse?
What the heck? Jimmy Failure? Do you want Lego in there? Which is just a fun out of context quote because, do you want Lego in there, Joe?
I don't want Lego anywhere.
Definitely not. Failure said. But what's so fascinating about this story is the divide in the country. Republicans think it is insane that they are forcing identity politics into Legos.
Diversity is not identity politics. Jesus Christ. You have to pick it one way or another. Either diversity is identity politics or just general mentioning of race is identity politics, which is actually correct. But then you also have to include everybody else, like white people, conservatives, Christians, all the other fronts. That's also identity politics. You can't have your cake and eat it too that some diversity or some race inclusion is identity politics.
As long as it's not white.
But not us. We're the norm. You're a moron. Oh.
He went on to say, Democrats are upset they didn't make a drag queen stripper. It shouldn't be going on the way it's going, but the reason they force identity into toys is because they think identity comes with a built-in political orientation, and that's what they're after here. I'm not having it.
Because God forbid some of my Legos are black.
And does he think that Lego is owned by the Democratic Party?
They also
it's
thought
not even American.
But they thought Xbox sold out to the climate change establishment, so I don't know what's happening anymore.
This non-American company is doing the bidding of the Democratic Party by having Legos that
are not all yellow,
that include more people.
So tell me, what was so bad?
What is the controversy? Are they putting drag performers in Legos? What is he talking about here? Well, the brand recently introduced new characters to its Friends line, including those with different
Rachel,
skin tones.
Ross. Oh, wait, not those.
Not those friends.
Okay. Those are all white, so.
That's not identity.
We wouldn't, so we wouldn't have to talk about identity politics.
Including those with different skin tones, disabilities, limb difference, and vitiligo. The company said it has done so after feedback that children had a desire to see themselves, their friends, and their families better represented. Those bastards.
What's so wrong about this? Why is this bad?
That's what the Republicans are up to these days. That is what they're campaigning against. This was a mainstream Fox News segment.
Leave it to Fox News.
Legos went woke.
To have a little Lego dude in a wheelchair and then throwing an entire gigantic 10-minute rant about this just because they, wanted less diversity and inclusion in their block building sets.
So it's literally this Lego is missing an arm. They're forcing their way into your kids' toys because of identity politics, because they think it's got built-in political orientation, and I'm not having the one-armed Lego man.
You know what just really depresses me every time?
Jesus wouldn't have a one-armed Lego. Lego with vitiligo? No way, not in my America.
You know what depresses me so much? Man, do you know how much money Fox News makes? And this is what we get from Fox
Right.
News?
This is hard-hitting journalism from Fox News.
Oh,
Perfect for our purposes,
I
though.
guess, man. I guess.
You know, when you first pitched this segment, I was like, man, this is going to be so much more work every week. Like, we already have to come up with headlines and then a main segment. Now we're going to have to do this other segment. And I literally told you that I didn't want to have to look for stories for this every week.
You don't really have to look, man.
This is the first one we've done for the past 3 weeks. It's been done like ahead of time before we've done anything else because it's so easy to find these stories.
Oh, man. Let's go to our main segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
In our main segment today, we are going to talk about House Bill H.R. 1095. Now, this is not some crazy Southern state legislature bill that we're talking about this time. This is in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Does it actually have an act name, or is it just the number?
It's not, the full information is not available currently.
Cool.
So it is just H.R. 1095. It doesn't even have text for the bill submitted yet. But the title of the bill is to declare an AR-15 style rifle chambered in a .223 Remington round or a 5.56 by 45 millimeter NATO round
So specific.
to be the national gun of the United States.
The national gun.
We have a national animal, the bald eagle. We have a flag, two flags apparently, whatever that one guy, no, 2 national anthems.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Well, 2 if you ask my neighbor a couple doors down, because it's the Confederate flag and the U.S. flag. We have 2 national anthems, according to the conservatives as well. So why not a national gun? And then, of course, it's got to be the AR-15. I swear, I'm not making this up. This bill was sponsored by Alabama Representative, I swear I'm not making this up, Barry Moore. It's a little on the nose, I think.
Oh, Jesus. You know, I was literally just going to ask you, like, I don't get it. And then you just said it. I'm like, oh, no.
To borrow a phrase from Thomas Smith, that sounds like a Carmen Sandiego villain.
Oh, God. Who else we got?
The co-sponsors so far, and it's still in a committee, so these are all people from the Oversight Committee, because that's the committee this is coming out of. Andrew Clyde from Georgia, who owns a gun store. And he's the one who handed out assault rifle lapel pins to Republican lawmakers during the National Gun Violence Survivors Week recently.
So, real good dude is what you're saying.
Right. Totally not a wacko gun nut. Speaking of wacko gun nut, also Lauren Boebert from Colorado, who, of course, other than being supposedly an escort, also formerly ran a gun-themed restaurant in the city of Rifle, Colorado, named Shooters. We also have, if that is his real name, George Santos from New York, who, of course, has had a relationship with the AR-15 rifle, which was used in the Pulse nightclub shooting that he falsely claimed killed his coworker. And finally, just to round out the bag of mixed nuts here, of course, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, who I didn't write anything. I'm sure you're all aware of
Who she is
and why she would be willing to co-sponsor this type of bill.
So basically, we want to use this introduction of a bill to talk about the obsession with guns in our country and just the weird cultiness that goes around it and how it has drastically negative impacts on our people here.
So first, they want to make this the national gun of the United States. And I would argue it already is the national gun
I mean, I'm going to be honest
of the United States.
If I had to pick a gun that was going to be the national gun, it might as well be the AR-15 at this point.
It might as well replace the bald eagle, the flag, the anthem, everything. We'll just shoot it up into the air before every sporting game. That's fine with me. At the Olympics, instead of playing the Star Spangled Banner, just have somebody firing the assault rifle into the air. I think that's appropriate for America.
Have you ever seen Idiocracy?
Yes, I definitely
I'm imagining
have.
that Terry Crews scene that they do the national anthem and just
Yes, I believe wholeheartedly the AR-15 is the symbol of America to the rest of the world. It is our national gun, and here is just a partial list. I know I'm leaving a bunch out of this, but I just wanted to give a few partial list of mass shootings where an AR-15 style assault rifle was used just in the last 10 years in this country. We have the Buffalo, New York white supremacist who shot up a supermarket and killed 10 people. We have the Highland Park, Illinois parade shooting, which left 7 dead. You have, of course, the Uvalde, Texas school shooting, which included 19 children and 2 teachers being murdered. The Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Florida, which left 17 dead. The largest mass shooting in American history, the Las Vegas, Nevada concert shooting, which killed 58. The Sutherland Springs, Texas church shooting, which left 26 dead. The aforementioned Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida, 49 murders. San Bernardino, California had a shooting with 2 domestic terrorists that left 14 dead. The Sandy, well, they're all domestic terrorism, honestly, but this were like ISIL-inspired shootings. And finally, the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Connecticut, which left 27 dead, and Alex Jones broke.
I'm glad that you said that about San Bernardino, because, man, out of that list, first off, it was kind of crazy because I'm just sitting here while you're reading that and like, oh yeah, I remember that one. Oh yeah, I remember that one. Oh yeah, I remember that one. Oh yeah. And that's just like all these things, like you just remember hearing about all these like horrible tragedies one after another. It's awful.
All in the last 10 years.
But on this list, do you remember, or can you point out, listeners, which one you think Republicans cared about the most? Duh, it was the San Bernardino one.
Because they were Muslims.
Literally. And it's so weird, man, when we have to talk about how this cult of identity around guns has just enveloped our culture. It's rather scary as how when we can just list off all of these mass shootings that happen so quickly with the same gun. Like we didn't even talk about all the other things that happened with other types of guns and stuff. And also we don't talk about the people that were also injured. I mean, even in the Las Vegas one, it was like 600 people that were injured because of that thing.
Yeah, it went on for quite a long time.
Right. And this is just every day, every single day.
And we are the only country in the world where this happens at anywhere near this frequency.
So we were talking about ideas on how to discuss this thing. We were kind of just both bringing up our own points of we want to talk about. I initially wanted to go into, and I'm glad you brought this up first, actually, to be honest, religion and guns. There's this weird relationship between Christianity and just shooting the hell out of everything with as many guns as possible that we now have in this country that just is out of control. And we're going to talk about the Moonies in a little bit and the crazy the AR-15 church. But I remember specifically asking you while I was researching this, wasn't there that one story about that church who gave away like an AR-15 and it made like a lot of headlines? And I couldn't remember what it was, so I looked it up for the story and I just Googled literally church gives away AR-15, and oh my god, there were so many stories about like just, and all different ones from all over the country. Just church gives away here, church gives away here. And I just put down a couple of examples for you all. We have Grace Baptist Church in Troy, New York, who held an AR-15 assault rifle giveaway, which I guess on a flyer it read, "Does the Bible defend my right to bear arms?"
Yes, all of those firearms that they talk about in the Bible.
A pastor in Tennessee went viral for posting a video promoting an AR-15 giveaway. And if Jason, if you haven't seen it, like just click on the link, man. Look at this guy. Look at this.
He is wearing what appears to be the word love on a shirt. The L is a handgun. The O is a grenade. The V are 2 knives intersecting.
And we don't see
and
the
we
E.
can't see the E because he's got his flannel shirt covering it. But yes, has 2 assault rifles akimbo, as they say.
Oh my god.
And he looks confused in the picture.
He looks like
he
he's
wasn't
about to,
ready for them to take the picture.
Right. He looks like he's about to, I mean, this is from a video, so that's just a still from a video, but he looks like he's about to shoot up a school like right now.
This doesn't make me any less likely to go to this church than I would any other.
And at least like the first example was the church actually like raffling off for like a fundraiser. This guy's just straight up using AR-15s just to lure people to his church. That's just, it was.
Yeah, they worship guns as their god.
But it's not even just
Guns
that.
and money. Those are the two gods of America.
It's this weird like bait that they're putting in front of people, saying like, hey, the more times you come to church, and this is what this guy did, the more times you come to church, like in the next month, each time you'll get a ticket for this raffle. So it's literally, you're going to church and they're just forcing people to go to church on this weird idea that if I go to church enough times, I'll have a good chance of getting a murder weapon. It's insane.
Pretty sure if you replaced the dead crucified body of Jesus hanging up in the middle of most churches with an AR-15, like a big one, I don't think too many people would complain.
Well, I mean, how many like of those weird pop depictions of Jesus holding the AR-15s, like just being like super badass, have you seen before? Like, it's all over the place, man.
And it usually is like arm in arm with Trump and the ripped, like white, blue-eyed Jesus.
He's going all Terminator
from Bethlehem.
On these people.
Yeah.
I got two more for you. Another one was a church in Mississippi that set up outside of a Walmart to raffle off 2 AR-15s. And I'm gonna be honest, man, if that's not America, I don't know what is. And this last one, I have to go into a little bit more detail because this story's crazy. In 2014, another church in Missouri, so it's a little bit older, made headlines for hosting a Father's Day raffle for 2 AR-15s to explicitly target and lure men, by their own admission, 18 to 35 years old, to their church. This was by Ignite Church, which was like just this weird, like manly type of church where like they played like really hardcore heavy rock instead of church hymns. The dude's all tatted up with a mohawk for pastors. It's crazy.
I'm used to churches targeting much younger
Oh,
men
I see
for
what
their
you
church.
did there. Yeah, the non-consenting at least. And outside,
Don't make no difference to Jesus.
and outside of the explicit deception of luring people to Jesus with guns, fathers were also highly encouraged to bring their kids, because for each kid they bring, they would receive an extra raffle ticket. So great, we're going to force our own children to be indoctrinated because we may get a gun. They also would get an extra ticket if they brought their own dad to service. So great. And then in a YouTube video, which I tried so hard to find it, man. I spent so long. I went through the Wayback Machine and everything. I could not find it. In a YouTube video that is now private, unfortunately, a pastor rocking a Bass Pro Shops cap and a flannel, because of course it is, says, quote, "We're going to give away these 2 stinking guns. You know
come
why?"
on, you can do better than that.
Oh, I'm bad at accents, dude. I gotta get my accent right. "We gonna give away these 2 stinking guns. You know why? Because we can. We're awesome like that." I can't. I can't.
Hey, you gave it a good shot. It wasn't.
I feel like I was more hillbilly than redneck.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You know.
He went on to say, "You could kill a weak zombie with this thing, but if you really want to double tap a zombie in style, you're going to want our grand prize, the Lamborghini of AR-15s." And I can't remember what it was, but it's in the article. And then they went on apparently, and I don't know what this is. I'm just kind of assuming this at this point because I only have the quote. But I'm guessing they went on in the video talking about how dads shouldn't like skip this, and that like, oh, like don't fall asleep or don't oversleep with this. You better make it to church. Otherwise you're gonna miss your chance. They said, quote, "Don't cry to me that you're a pansy and you can't set your alarm. You're a big boy. You got big balls between your legs. You're a dad, right?"
See, growing up Catholic, that's more of the priest that I'm used to talking about balls. This is starting to sound familiar.
In the face of backlash, one of the pastors said, "People are crazy, period. Murder has been going on since the beginning of time. The first murder recorded in the Bible was with a rock."
The totally true story of Cain and Abel.
I just can't. I will end it on some good news.
And what does he think? We think that no one was ever killed before guns were a thing?
I don't know, man.
Is that the assumption?
I mean, this is just like the dumbest version of guns don't kill people, people kill people. But it's like, Jesus.
Rocks kill people.
Yeah, right. Should we ban rocks, man? You know, people kill each other with knives and spoons. Should we, you know, we die from eating. Should we ban food, dude? I will end it with some good news, though. Apparently, Dan, the guitarist for the church, ended up winning one of the rifles. And he said in the article, quote, "I was very happy to win the rifle. I've never won anything in my life." So it was really exciting.
Is that good news? After reading that quote, do you really think this person should have an assault rifle?
Poor Dan's never won anything in his life. He needed to win something.
He's so happy. I'm going to go out and shoot up a school right now.
Oh my God.
And I did add on here something that I remember grew up, my dad was very much a deer hunter. My entire family, you look at the obituaries of any male on my dad's side of the family, it will mention deer hunting. So I'm very well aware of gun hunting culture in Wisconsin.
Mine too.
I know that at least Catholic churches in the state here bless people's guns before they go deer hunting. And I know it still happens up north. I don't know if it still happens like down in the city here in Milwaukee, but certainly up north it's a thing. I always thought that was really weird. Like, people literally bring their guns to the church and you stack them all up, and the priest does the holy water thing and blesses them and throws the water on the gun cases.
So like that's another thing we can kind of talk about.
I never, as far as I know, I've never seen my dad in a church. I'm not trying to insinuate that my family was a part of this. I'm aware of it.
But that's another thing we can kind of talk about as well, because Wisconsin itself has a very weird, very rigid hunting culture that you do not mess with. I know a lot of older Democrats who are steadfast Democrats. They want all the things that most Democrats want, but then the second you mention guns, they lose their minds. It's like, I remember even like my uncle who like went up to our state senator and said like, hey, I love everything you're doing, man. If you touch my guns, bad things are going to happen to you. I'm like, gee, why are you threatening our state senator? You like him.
Because Fox News keeps saying they're coming for my gun.
But he hates Fox News. That's the weird part. It's this weird thing in Wisconsin. Like we just love hunting so much that you just have to love hunting to do anything in the state.
And you certainly do not need to hunt, nor really should you be allowed to hunt with an AR-15.
I completely agree. And this idea that, it's a perfect hunting rifle, but for like lots of people use it because of shoulder issues and things like that. Like, no, man. Like, it's usually bunk and BS.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any reason why would that style rifle be any better, and wouldn't they also be able to make the same type of single shot or less than 7 round rifle anyway? Like, why would you need the assault style 30 round magazine semi-automatic rifle?
You're just gonna be spewing into the forest. I can't hit the goddamn deer.
Yeah, unnecessary. We had an assault rifle ban in the United States, which did not affect deer hunting in the slightest.
No. So tell me about the AR-15 church.
So there is a church in Pennsylvania called the Rod of Iron Ministries. It was started by the son of Sun Myung Moon, known to have started the church in Korea that we know as the Moonies. It's a cult. And they are a far right-wing church who literally worships guns and the AR-15. They carry around AR-15s. There's a picture in this article of people in like priestly vestments, a little fancy like silk robes and stuff. They're totally normal, manly men with their silver and gold crowns carrying assault rifles.
Except for Sean Moon's crown, who is explicitly custom made to be made out of bullets.
Yes, gold bullets, and he carries around a gold-plated AR-15.
With his camo like suit top he has going on right now.
Yes, his camouflage suit jacket that he's wearing. They have even had events that featured Steve Bannon and Dana Loesch, top Republican figures, for a church that explicitly worships assault rifles. Worships. That is their god.
So keep in mind that there's also conservative right-wing papers that spout this crap. We already talked about the Epoch Times from the Falun Gong cult. That's a right-wing newspaper. The Moonies have the Washington Times, which just spread tons of right-wing crazy propaganda all the time that gets shared by literal elected office holders who are currently leading us in our country right now.
And this church says they are preparing for a civil war with the deep state.
So there you go. There was also, I remember like a while ago, I don't think it's in this article, but there were articles or stories about how this church was then like finding encampments or something in Texas to train people, like train up militias. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
I mean, that we had our militias episode that's all over the country.
Point taken. Well, I'm talking specifically with this church.
With that church?
Yeah.
I can imagine. They seem to have a lot of money. They're popular. And it's crazy. Like, they are literally like nutcases, but because it's religion, you can't touch, you can't do anything.
No.
So their religious freedom, if they want to basically create a radicalized army that is willing to die to fight the imagined deep state, that's perfectly acceptable because it's religious freedom.
I think that's a good point then to transition to how much damage this stuff can cost us then. We found a couple of different statistics from a couple of different sources. I found an article from Pew Research. This is from 2021. And these are just like general facts that they found from their reporting and surveys over the last number of years. 30% of the US population personally owns a gun. So that is a third of our country. 40% of Americans live in a household with a gun. And then, not surprising, Republicans are way more likely to own a gun more than Democrats, almost doubling the likelihood of doing so. 60% of those who own a gun give personal safety as the main reason why they actually have it in their house. And I would like to ask you about that, Jason. I mean, I know we've heard this argument over and over again, it's like whether or not personal safety is a good reason to have a gun. I remember the whole bit from, who's that like progressive or left-wing comic from Australia?
Jim Jeffries?
Yeah, who did the whole bit about that. Like, what are your thoughts on personal safety with the gun and stuff like that?
Well, we'll have some studies that deal with this topic later on, but my personal thoughts are you're much more likely to shoot a member of your own family accidentally if you keep a gun for home defense. Especially, a lot of the people that own these guns are not in high crime neighborhoods. And where I live, say I get woken up by a noise in the middle of the night, and I don't know what it is. If I have a gun in the house, the instinct, and especially when you're half awake, you're not really thinking all that clearly, might be, oh no, someone's breaking into the house, I have to grab my gun and defend my house. What are the odds that it's going to be someone breaking into your house in the middle of the night when there's going to be someone home? How many home invasions are there?
I was going to say the same thing.
In rural Wisconsin, not very many. Probably it's someone coming home late. Maybe they forgot their key. Maybe it's someone that came to visit, or whatever the case may be. That's much more, even though that seems unlikely, it's actually much more likely than someone trying to break into my house. So if I grab a gun, I see a figure in the dark, I shoot, and say by some miracle I actually manage to hit them, what do I do when it ends up being my wife, or my sister, or my mom, or Joe, who forgot something when he was over recording and decided to come
We would break into your house to get
late
it.
at night to come get it. And
I forgot my Mac, dude.
and
I'm
was
sorry.
merely trying to find the window to my bedroom to knock on to not disturb me in the middle of the night. There's so many scenarios that you're killing, and I don't have kids. I mean, that's the one thing that kind of changes is I don't have kids, but that's a big thing. If you have children, think of how many times you might have snuck out of your parents' house or came back home in the middle of the night. That happens all the time. You're going to shoot one of your kids if you are trying to use this gun for like home defense, and that's the first thing that you reach for when you hear a noise because you're so terrified. Me personally, if someone is legitimately trying to break into my house, I'm just going to leave. I'm going to try to find a window, anything I can get out of and get out of the house and take my wife with me. We have 2 dogs. They can handle it or they can't. I don't care. I'm just going to get out of the house. I'm going to call the police, and that's the way it's going to be. I'm not going to, like, it's not the Wild West. I'm not Dirty Harry. I'm not going to, defend my home against imagined home invasion. That's not what people want to do. Nobody wants to break into your house to try to kill you. That's not why people break into houses. They break into houses when you're not home to try to steal your stuff to sell it. They don't want to, tie you up and ransom you?
Right.
This is ridiculous. So those are my personal thoughts that I rambled on way too much.
No, I'm glad you said, because I guess I very sympathetic to, now thank you for saying his name, Jim Jeffries' line of logic was, you're just being dishonest. I would argue that 60% of those people who own guns are just being dishonest. They don't actually want it at all for personal safety. It's more so if they just want to have a gun. That's it. You enjoy having a gun, you want to go shoot guns, and that's okay. You don't need to have it for personal safety. Just don't lie about it, especially to yourself. I also have from that same Pew Research study, Black and Hispanic people are twice as likely to consider gun violence as a problem than white people, which I'm also not surprised surprised about, because like you said before, because segregation is such a big deal, most white people who are like desperately in love and obsessed with these guns don't live in high crime areas. In fact, most people don't live in even in high populous areas. They're going to be high in crime. And then gun ownership is also, not surprisingly, closely linked with views about guns. And I think that just kind of really reiterates what we've been talking about a lot, which is gun ownership in America has just become this weird identity for a lot of people. It's no longer a thing that you have, a tool that you have, and don't buy when anyone tries to tell you that either. It is now, I am identifying as a gun owner, which pushes people so hard to hurt themselves in any way they can just to maintain that identity throughout any type of stability or inconsistency, I guess you could say.
That they have to defend the idea of gun ownership
Over anything else.
Right. Even while we're literally having all of these mass shootings and everything going on, they feel that they have to defend their idea that gun ownership is a positive thing and American, and it's their version of patriotism.
Well, and I remember the story that happened that was like a week or two ago where some girl got shot, and the first thought her parents gave to the newspapers was, well, I'm really glad that the liberals didn't use us to take away our guns. Your daughter just got shot, man. And that's your first response, because you are in a literal cult of gun ownership.
And I have some gun violence statistics from the BBC that I wanted to bring up. Mass shootings in the United States are actually increasing dramatically over the last 10 years.
Yeah, this is a really scary graph, to be honest.
From 2014 to 2019, we averaged around 350 mass shootings a year in the United States, which is already insane. It's so far beyond every other country.
Right.
But in the last 3 years, from 2020, it has been over 600 a year.
And increasing.
And we're already over 80 at the time that this was published in 2023, which was a month ago. As a percentage of all homicides in the United States in 2020, gun-related killings were 79% of all homicides. In Canada, 37%. In Australia, 13%. In the UK, 4%.
I wonder what it could be.
Yeah, what's the difference between those countries? Well,
it's our culture.
It might have something to do with the number of guns we own. Per 100 residents, the United States is more than double any other country in the world. We actually have, and we've said this before, more guns than people in this country. Per 100 residents, we have 120.5 guns in the United States. Canada has 34.7. The next highest country to the United States is Yemen at 52.8. It is completely beyond out of control. Our obsession with guns is a religion. It is the religion of guns. That's what the United States has become.
Well, I think what concerns me more was who's been funding a lot of this as well, because there's been so much propaganda coming from gun lobbies about this as well. And if you look at the BBC article, you will just see constant differences in spending between pro-gun lobbies versus gun control advocacy groups. And the only time gun control groups actually spent more than gun lobby groups was in 2018, and that's probably most likely because of the March for Our Lives stuff happened after Stoneman Douglas.
Which match?
Oh.
I mean, it had Las Vegas in 2017, so it would have been right after that as well.
Yeah, I believe it was Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. That was the Florida one.
Yeah.
But then even in 2020, just 2 years later, gun rights went straight back to spending way more money than.
And we've gone over like gun lobbying spending
and
in
dark
previous
money
episodes.
groups. And we even did the Citizens United thing that just paved the way for so much dark money from right-wing groups just to fill in from crazy billionaires.
The episode that we went over the Uvalde shooting, we got really into a lot of those statistics as well. So
I remember that, yeah.
If you're interested in that topic, you can refer to that episode. One of the statistics that I saw, it was a study published in the International Journal of Comparative and Applied Criminal Science, said that the United States accounts for 73% of the mass shootings that occurred in developed countries between 1998 to 2019. 73% in the United States. We're
the anarchy.
We're not anywhere near that level of world population. And yet we account for, by far and away, the most mass shootings. And I guarantee if you look into it more, the next countries would be like Mexico, Barbados, countries that are around the United States because of their proximity to the United United States, it's much easier to get guns in those countries. We are actually a bad influence on the rest of the world around us because of our obsession with guns. And we talked a little bit earlier about guns for defense. Well, I've got 2 studies that I want to talk about. The first one is a 2009 study funded by the National Institutes of Health, National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, and that found that individuals who were in possession of a gun were 4.46 times more likely to be shot in an assault than those not in possession. Individuals who are in possession of a gun were also 4.23 times more likely to be fatally shot in an assault. And even after they tried controlling for the variables that most highly affected the results. So they tried to skew it to see if they could get the results to be lower based on things like living in bad neighborhoods, things like that, taking that into consideration. In those reduced models, individuals who were in possession of a gun were still 2.55 times more likely to be shot in an assault than those not in possession, and individuals who were in possession of a gun were also 3.54 times more likely to be fatally shot in an assault. The conclusion of the study was that, on average, guns did not protect those who possessed them from being shot in an assault. Although successful defensive gun uses are possible and do occur each year, the probability of success may be low for civilian gun users in urban areas.
And I think that's the crux of the whole thing. You have actual data and probabilities versus the story we tell ourselves.
Right. We're all Dirty Harry.
Right. We're all going Rambo in any second. We're gonna, or whoever that guy was. What's the main character from Die Hard?
John
McClane. Oh. Sorry, what wrong crazy gun nut.
And maybe more interesting, a 2022 study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine followed California residents who did not own a firearm but lived in a home with a firearm owner. So secondhand firearm exposure.
Christ.
Found that people living with handgun owners died by homicide at twice the rate of their neighbors in gun-free homes. That difference was driven largely by homicides at home, which were 3 times more common among people living with handgun owners. Meaning, maybe you get into an argument with your roommate. If you don't have a gun, how far can things really escalate, right? Physical violence. Still not desirable, but everybody's going to live to move on. But if there's a gun in the home,
it's much easier.
Yeah, you're much more likely to end up shooting somebody. They went on to say that they detected much larger differences for particular types of homicide. Most notably, people living with handgun owners were 7 times more likely to be shot by their spouse or intimate partner.
Oh my goodness.
In many of these cases, instead of being protective, the household gun probably operated as the instrument of death.
Well, and it goes to show why there's such a need for these red flag laws that we're actually dealing with right now.
The ones that Republicans refused to reinstitute, even though they'd been renewed for like the past 20 years.
Right. And it's absolutely insane, because this is why those red flag laws exist. Or at least they should exist. It's right here in the data.
And the conclusion from that study was that living with a handgun owner is associated with substantially elevated risk for dying by homicide. Women are disproportionately affected because in that group of people being killed by their partner, 84% of intimate partner shootings were women. So women don't live with a man that owns a gun because he'll likely shoot you with it. And maybe you're thinking, well, maybe this is like the Rasmussen study where there's a small number of people, or, it's not really indicative of a larger group. Well, this is one of the largest studies on gun violence ever conducted. It covered 17.6 million adults across 12 years.
That's a little bit more than 1,000.
Which was only possible due to the gun registration laws in California.
Oh.
A study that would be pretty much impossible to do to the rest of the country because we don't even track who owns a gun for the most part. And we were talking about how much it becomes part of your identity, this gun ownership. So I kind of want to talk about this trend that's popped up lately, and it is a conservative. It's how you show how conservative you are. And those are things like taking your family photo, your Christmas photo. You can't say holiday. Don't say holiday.
Yeah.
Your Christmas photos with your family all holding guns. We've all seen it. Like, how that looks absolutely ridiculous to people that are outside of this cult.
Yes, literally.
It looks irresponsible, dangerous, stupid. The optics, and especially like the rest of the world. The rest of the world, that's how they see Americans.
Quite literally.
Are these pictures. And you find them all over the place. There's people lying like seductively posed in beds, surrounded by their guns.
Yep.
Like, it's become like a sexual fetish and an item of worship and part of your identity. It's become so part. I can't even fathom like how much guns have become part of conservative culture. And so much so that it's found its way into political advertisements.
Which, I mean, it has before, but now it's more than ever.
Right. There was
I'm glad I didn't know this. This is great.
So there was an article by the New York Times that said that during the 2022 midterms, so just last year, there were more than 100 ads featuring a politician with a gun. It has literally been how you show that you're a conservative. I remember the Dr. Oz ad.
Yep.
That little twerpy Hollywood doctor.
Yep.
To show that he's a manly man.
He needs a gun.
He needs a gun. He needs to fire a gun on camera to be taken seriously by conservatives. You, of course, had that ad from a few years ago with Lauren Boebert where she was walking down the Capitol with a gun, basically insinuating that she was going to shoot liberals in Congress.
Well, and I even remember, like, the need for Democrats, and this is a little bit older, so this is not the 2022 midterms, but I still remember the need for Democrats to constantly pose with guns to say that they're for guns as well. I remember during my schooling, I had to analyze a commercial for Joe Manchin where he took aim at needless policies, and he was just in a forest with a rifle and just starts, like, shooting up, like, pieces of paper all over the place. It was insane.
And certainly here in Wisconsin, as we were talking about our gun culture with deer hunting, that's what you usually see is a politician either, with a gun or aiming at something, usually with a blaze orange coat on or something like that, clearly in a hunting environment. These are a whole different breed. We even had last year former Missouri Governor Eric Greitens, who got in trouble for running an ad while running for the Senate, saying that he was going rhino hunting, the Republican in name only, like people that aren't real conservatives but are Republicans.
In this case, it's just the not absolute crazy MAGA Republican.
And he didn't even try to couch it in I'm outdoors going rhino hunt. They literally had an armed raid of a house, like where they kicked the door in and they had people dressed in military uniforms, which is why he got in trouble, because you're not supposed to have that in an ad. This is the modern day Republican Party, the modern day conservatives. They want to be shown as violent psychopaths with AR-15s because that's what gets them elected.
Well, it's not even just guns, though, per se. Like, do you remember? So, first off, there was like the Ron DeSantis Top Gun one, right? Where he was pretending to be like this Air Force pilot that was just looking all badass and stuff like that. But there was also the Dan Crenshaw one where he tried to take on Antifa, like freaking Mission Impossible.
He was like James Bond.
Yeah.
I think it was definitely implied that he was armed during that.
I'm sure it was. But it's the exact same phenomenon. They're trying to give themselves they're like the literal Rambo party. And it's absolute insanity. And I remember, I don't know honestly what Democrats can do about this. There was one ad, maybe it was during 2020 or maybe it was like 2018, from some Democrat congressional candidate, I have no idea, I'm sure he lost, who was like a former Navy SEAL or whatever it was. And during it was a very good ad. Just him with a table in a room with like I'm guessing it was an AR-15 right on the table. And then basically he just takes it apart without looking at it and then puts it back together while talking about how like he actually gives a rip about real sensible gun laws. Well, I'm not just going to placate to just random crazy violence for people because I love guns like Republicans do. I actually know how to really use a gun. And then he just kind of walks away. And it was a very good, powerful ad. But like, I don't know what else Democrats can do to just stave all this weird cult mentality at this point.
And it has become the literal symbol of America, regardless if it ever becomes the national gun.
By legislation.
Right, which it won't currently. But who knows the next time we have a Republican president?
Yeah. But like you said, it doesn't need to be legally the national gun. We already have the symbol. We have thousands and thousands of just dead bodies, just with the mass shootings alone, and all the homicides from the gun-related deaths here, too. It's really bad. It's really freaking bad. And it all deals with this weird cult identity that happens. A lot of racism, because it's all pushed by white people, because of course it is. And I don't know how to combat it. Pun not intended.
Yeah, I would say, if you're somebody like what were you saying that was your uncle?
Yeah.
Just try to separate that idea of deer hunting culture and having a hunting rifle versus the lunatics with the AR-15s and posing for their Christmas picture and literally trying to erase the few gun laws that we have. Just separate those things in your mind. That any gun control law that is going to be proposed is not going to, just like it didn't under Bill Clinton when they outlawed assault rifles, it is not going to change you going out and deer hunting in the fall. Just understand that. And I think you'll be at least part of the way there towards what we need, which is reasonable gun control in the United States, because it is crazy in this country the amount of people that get murdered by guns every day. And it does not happen in the rest of the world.
And it also, it's not just because of like media and other stuff too, right? I hear a lot of the talk about how we have all these violent movies and games and TV shows. So does Canada. So does Australia. So does the UK. And we already went through those comparative statistics. And guess what? They don't have the problems we have. What do we have that's different? Way more freaking guns. And I'm not saying, I'm going to talk for myself. I'm not going to speak for you. I'm not saying you can't go and own a gun. If you want to own a gun, then go do it. If you want a gun to shoot in the range or go hunting, that's great. I fully support it. And we can even talk a little bit here and there about concealed carry, which we already talked about how having a gun just escalates the situation anyway. But even then, I'm not telling you to not go get a gun if you want one. But be honest with yourself and with others that you are putting yourself in far more danger.
And your family.
Than you would any potential perpetrator you're dreaming of potentially killing with this gun. Just keep that in mind. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively. That was fun. I enjoyed that. I know that was longer.
Well, it wasn't so much that.
It was all the air
It
stuff.
was everything else.
It was Scott Adams.